politics with someone they disagree with is stressful and frustrating. This is surprising. It means there are 47% who don't find talking politics with someone they disagree with to be stressful and frustrating. I don't believe it. Around this time, I usually do a monologue on how to reduce political tension at Thanksgiving dinner. It never helps. No one ever listens, and why should they? Taking advice from a TV host is like taking a ride from a stranger. It's risky, and you often end up dead. So instead of avoiding politics, let's go all in at Thanksgiving. But first, you must find the right way to insert it into dinner conversation. Here are some examples. Wow, these mashed potatoes are really hot. Almost as hot as our economy, which under President Trump grew at a 3 to 4% rate. Looks like we have more dinner rolls than people, much like jobs under Donald Trump, who helped create 4 million of them in just 2 years. So, Gramps, why don't you carve the turkey, just like President Trump carved our bloated bureaucracy when he cut 16 rules and regulations for everyone created, saving us $8 billion. Looks like we ran out of gravy, much like what happened to our doctors under Obamacare. Thank God Donald Trump repealed that mandate. Am I right, Grandma? I'm stuffed, much like the Supreme Court is, with 2 sterling appointments in Judges Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Maybe the kids can clear the table, just like Trump. So that's it. If you can't avoid politics with someone they disagree, why avoid politics? Instead, set the tone and the table with the truth. Because if you don't, someone else surely will. All right, I'm going to go to the people who have the conflicting Thanksgiving table routine. And Jesse, do your parents go hard on you for being an unpaid spokesman for Donald Trump?
Well, I'm paid.
I'm glad he said it. I was going to say it, but I'm glad.
Very funny. I actually thought that was a really good monologue.
That
was one of your better ones. I will say that, what? I wasn't being sarcastic. I thought it was a really good one. I would say the key to surviving my Thanksgiving is respecting your elders. Because, during the Bush years, I got a little cocky. Stocks were up, the surge worked. And my parents, are liberals, and my grandfather's a communist.
Oh, really?
So we're around the dinner table in 2006 or 7, and I started quoting Limbaugh. Yeah. And all of a sudden, grandfather slams his fist on the table and says, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about." Drooling, screaming. Whole table went quiet. Mom starts to clear. But he forgot he was angry. And so the next thing you know, he's like, "Hey, Jesse, pass the pumpkin cheesecake." But that's what's great about old people. They forget why they're angry. And you just have to learn, sometimes it's good to know, which bear not to poke.
You're right. Is he still with us, or?
God rest his soul.
Yes, because I was wondering if he was watching, how he would feel.
If he was still here, he would not be watching the fight.
You have a communist granddad. All right, Juan. So you're the father to 2 Republicans and I believe 1 liberal. Am I right?
That's true.
Okay. So on Christmas, does the liberal get better gifts?
The liberal is my daughter. Yes,
I know.
I don't.
No, then your sons.
No, I give them all great gifts.
Do you ever end up on teams around the dinner table with your 2 sons and you and your daughter teaming up against them politically?
One of the things that you missed in your monologue was a lot of people actually agree on things, even if they may be liberal or conservative. There's a lot that they agree on, like
like infrastructure.
No. How about like not insulting the guy who took out Bin Laden? I say, how about trusting?
He had it coming.
Yeah, because what did Trump say? He was a Clinton supporter, right?
Yeah.
A Clinton supporter. How about you not saying that you're CIA? Let's just ignore them. We have something better to do. We don't agree with your conclusions. Or maybe
these are liberal talking points.
Yeah, that's right. At the dinner table, like you were saying, maybe you could say, a dinner table with Trump and Vladimir Putin and was it Kim Jong-il? And you could say, I just believe everything they say. That's good with me. Whatever you guys say, just pass the turkey.
I think that it's impossible not to talk about politics. Not only that, I think everyone wants to talk about politics. The difference on Thanksgiving, especially if you're hosting, you have to set the rules.
Right.
And you have to let people know, don't take things personally. Like, it's okay if we disagree, and you can have a competition. And you can even keep score. You can have a yellow pad and a tally with different columns and hash marks, and whoever gets the best barbs in gets the biggest piece of pie. I don't have a problem with that at all, but you have to let people know not to take it personally.
Yeah.
So when someone says something that you disagree disagree with, don't react like it's a personal slight.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to distance ourselves from politics in this country. It's not the only thing that defines us. And politics, as we all know, talking about it, it can be very passionate, but it can also be so much fun.
Yeah, you know, Dana, no one talks politics at your place because you're too busy telling them about Jasper.
Yeah,
So I figured
dogs are the great equalizer, actually. If you talk, you can always find common ground with people to talk about your pets and your love of pets. So if things get really bad and no one, like, you have that uncomfortable silence, you could bring up a dog. I'm actually very skilled at making sure that everyone realizes we all agree.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I'm very good at that.
You and Juan are saying the same thing. Now, one year I had an experiment. I wanted to bring up the most uncomfortable topics that I possibly could.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, the two winners were, because it was 2003, O.J. Simpson, and my grandmother was very upset because a lot of people, there was a very heated conversation. Of course, this was before the big documentary. And the other was, what do you want your funeral to be like?
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Wow, so that makes politics actually, yeah, you found something that people will then revert
You could
back.
also ask people, like, what was their best vacation of the year? Like, and then you could talk about travel. Like, there's things to talk about.
What about if I was Jesse's grandfather and I said, these young people, they're so idiotic. They don't know anything.
You said that on my show last night.
Yeah, let's forget about it. We'll go with Jesse.
My solution, drink a lot of wine and play music really loud, and that is the solution, because then you can't hear anything.
That's perfect.
All right. They're telling me to. A Fox News alert now. We are learning that President Trump has submitted written answers to special counsel Robert Mueller in the Russia investigation. Remember that thing? For more details, we go over to John Roberts. John?
Hey, good afternoon to you, Greg. I was just checking the date because this thing has pretty much been a year in negotiating. It was November 21st of 2017 that Robert Mueller's office first reached out to the president's outside legal counsel to say that he wanted a sit-down interview with the president regarding the issue of Russia and collusion by the Trump campaign to throw the election and possible obstruction of justice in the firing of James Comey. After a long and tortuous pas de deux, the president's attorneys this afternoon submitted a number of written answers to questions that Mueller wanted answered about Russia and collusion only, nothing to do with obstruction of justice. In a statement, the president's attorneys, Jay Sekulow and Rudy Giuliani, say they thought that the request for information regarding obstruction of justice went too far. Rudy Giuliani saying, quote, "It has been our position from the outset that much of what has been asked raised serious constitutional issues and was beyond the scope of a legitimate inquiry. This remains our position today. The president has nonetheless provided unprecedented cooperation. The special counsel has been provided with more than 30 witnesses, 1.4 million pages of material, and now the president's written responses to questions. It is time to bring this inquiry to a conclusion," Rudy Giuliani counseled to the president. We do not know, Jesse, how many answers the president provided, but we do know that it is substantially less than the 49 questions that special counsel Robert Mueller had handed over to the president's legal team back at the beginning of March. So we'll see where this goes. A lot of people believe that Mueller is in the closing stages of the Russia investigation. There could be other leads that he pursues from here, but the president trying to close the door on this by providing these written answers. At the same time, by the way, another headline has emerged, the New York Times, saying that earlier this year, the president asked his then White House counsel, Don McGahn, to get the Justice Department to prosecute Hillary Clinton and former FBI Director James Comey. McGahn, according to the New York Times, told the president that that would be a very bad idea, could lead to his impeachment, and refused to do it. Now, we should point out at the same time that he was allegedly asking McGahn about this, the president was saying quite publicly that he thought that Comey and Clinton should be investigated and/or prosecuted. So I'm not sure how much further this goes, but asking the special counsel to actually do it would be a significant development.
All right, thanks, John. So, Dana,
Yeah.
nothing here about obstruction. It's just about whatever.
Well, so what the president decided to answer only questions on collusion and not on obstruction. And for Mueller, that might be enough. I don't know. We'll have to see. It will never be enough in the eyes of the media or for the Democrats who are about to take over in the House. So while this is a great way to try to get this off your plate before Thanksgiving so that the president and the first lady can have a Thanksgiving where they hopefully don't have to talk about this. That's what they're thinking. But this is starting to wrap up. Mueller is going to we're going to move forward with the sentencing hearing on December 4th of Mike Flynn. There will be more information around that. So I think after Thanksgiving, while there's a lame duck session where they're going to try to get a few things done, confirm some judges in the Congress, there's going to be a lot of activity in the Mueller investigation, and maybe it does wrap up by Christmas.
You know what? I think this is disgusting, Jesse, because this story took away from the pardoning of the turkey yesterday.
There could be some more pardons after this whole thing wraps up.
Yeah.
Also, just a small correction. You said investigation. It's actually pronounced witch hunt. The investigation is silent. But it's interesting the questions that were not answered, like you said, Dana. I feel like the legal team for Trump has beaten back the obstruction inquiry, which I think is a positive for him. On the negative side, you don't know who he's interviewed, Robert Mueller. You don't know what they have. There still could be other indictments coming down. Small ball players probably, but you don't know how these things could play out. I do find it interesting, and John brought that up about the president wanting the investigator to go after these other players on the left. And if you think about when this whole thing started, it was supposed to pursue any Russian collusion and anything that can kind of spread out from that. But if you look at that, an honest investigation would have looked into some of the FISA abuse allegations, some of the dirty tricks that were played on the Trump campaign with regard to spies and FISA abuse and things like that. We have not heard anything leading me to conclude that that's even been looked into at all. So listen, I'd love a surprise. I just don't see where that's going.
Yeah.
I know. But hopefully everybody... I didn't know Melania and Donald Trump talked about the special counsel investigation over Thanksgiving. That's news. Did you just break some news?
No, did I say that?
Yeah, you said they're not going to talk about it over Thanksgiving.
Well, I've never met them. I met him, but I don't know.
What do you know? What do you know, Dana, that you're not telling us?
I know nothing.
Oh, geez. Kennedy,
Yes.
Will you be talking about this at your Thanksgiving dinner?
I think this is actually really fun to talk about because you get to speculate what might be in the Mueller report because no one really knows.
Right.
And at this point, hopefully we don't have dueling memos from Adam Schiff and Devin Nunes.
I miss those days.
Yeah, we just might.
By the way, how do you spell that?
Nunes?
No, Schiff.
Juan, this is a family show.
Who gives a shit?
I'm not the president. Imagine what the president of the United States would reduce himself to such juvenile behavior, Kennedy.
That is so
You
shocking.
act like that's new.
In this day and age, I don't know what's happened to decorum.
I don't.
Oh, my goodness. Somebody get the fainting couch.
Who let those boobies in the White House? It's just disgusting. But I think Jesse's absolutely right. I think there could be some surprises in here. And I hope that this investigation doesn't just tackle things that might have happened between this administration and the Russia during the campaign and afterward. And I hope it sets a precedent for what we might find out in the future on some of these FISA warrant applications.
Juan, what do you foresee coming out of this investigation? What do you think is going to be in the Mueller report?
Well, I was on Fifth Avenue today and I saw Trump shoot a guy. And while he was doing it, all the Trump supporters said, "Doesn't matter to me, no big deal." And Trump said, I told you that. And I think that's what he wrote in the Mueller answer. Nothing you find, nothing you say is going to impact my base anyway. So go right ahead. I'm not answering your question.
But not just the base. I mean, people... This has been going on. This is the most prolonged rectal exam in history.
No,
and they're not finding anything.
What did they do on Bill Clinton? I mean, you go back and Ron.
Well, he helped.
They had a lot. So, I mean, these things went on for 5 years. So it's not the timing, although I think it would be good to get it done because 2020 is going to be so hyperbolic and aggressive. But I must say, the idea that they can decide what they're answering and not answering is an issue because then I think people in the House now with subpoena power and the like will feel more empowered to go at Donald Trump about obstruction. The idea that he was going to go after Jim Comey, who I believe is a Republican, Jesse. It's not just, but go after Jim Comey.
The president's very nonpartisan, Juan.
Oh, yeah.
Not about ideology at all.
Anybody he doesn't like, says the king, is going to have their head chopped off. But that is terrible. What kind of authoritarian behavior is
Juan,
that?
let me put this to you very quickly. Don't you think if Robert Mueller was so interested in obstruction that he would have compelled the president to testify, either in writing or in person about it?
Well, no.
might.
He doesn't have that. He has to go through justice, right? He has to go through now Matthew Whitaker, but he used to have to go through Rosenstein and Sessions.
Don't you think Rod Rosenstein would have thrown the door right
no,
open?
No, and to the contrary, I think that what you're doing is trying to play the politics, just like what you've seen from Giuliani and the Trump legal team. They're understanding the politics, but they are acting in a very aggressive manner to try to determine the limits of what Mueller can do. I don't think the Democrats
I think a Democratic president will think that.
We have to go, Jesse.
Another big story the White House is responding to today reports that Ivanka Trump used private email to conduct official business. President Trump blasting comparisons to the Clinton server scandal.
They weren't classified like Hillary Clinton. They weren't deleted like Hillary Clinton, who deleted 33. She wasn't doing anything to hide her emails. There was no servers in the basement like Hillary Clinton had. You're talking about a whole different, you're talking about all fake news. Hillary Clinton deleted 33,000 emails. She had a server in the basement. That's the real story.
All right, and the media, of course, fired up about the hypocrisy over those revelations.
The arrogance, the incredible arrogance, as with a little measure of stupidity, thinking that after watching this campaign, which she had a pretty good seat for, and then not, being scrupulous about your email practices is pretty remarkable.
At Trump rallies, they chant, "Lock her up, lock her up." Who are they referring to? Hillary or Ivanka?
Everything that he said about her, he's doing. Hillary's emails, she's got the email situation. He's in the middle of a constitutional crisis pretty soon.
Okay, another one. How many are those? Greg, fair comparison or not?
Let me get to that point. This is the hypocrisy. The accusation of hypocrisy is the gamble you took, all right, in which the downside is you only face accusations of hypocrisy if you win. So think of the two options. You can go after Hillary over her email scandal and lose and never have to face the accusation of hypocrisy, or you can go after Hillary for her email scandal and win and face this silly little business. I do think that the key word here is hundreds of emails, which for me is a day. So it's like, maybe there was a day or two that in a transitionary period that you did it. But I mean, generally in that position, you go through tens of thousands of emails. So I think that it's not a fair comparison by numbers. However, we find out that there's more, and she did it over a long period of time, then that's a different story.
And Dana, her spokesperson said, listen, less than 100 emails were official government business. A lot of it had to do with arranging travel and logistics for her schedule and her kids.
Yoga.
And,
I think it was yoga.
Yeah, and the wedding, right.
Oh, right.
And the grandparents' pictures.
Right. This was for a 6-month period of time just in the beginning of the administration, not for the whole 4-year span. Is it fair or unfair to make a comparison?
Well, look, none of this is fair, okay? Like, none of it's going to be fair. But can you understand why the opposition to President Trump would jump on this? Absolutely, you can understand it. So that's why you follow the rules so that you don't open yourself up to this problem. I do want to fact check one thing on the president.
Sure.
He said the private server was in the basement. It was not. It was in the bathroom.
Right.
So we have to make sure that we have the facts straight on that.
I have a bathroom in the basement, I think.
You live in an apartment.
Maybe it's a bucket.
I don't want to know what's in your basement. All right, Juan, but the president made some
Before you ask, can we all join hands and say, lock her up, lock her up? I mean, this guy's out there last week saying lock her up. And then today we find out he actually is asking the White House counsel to prosecute. And now his own daughter and his son-in-law are using a private server. My head.
They aren't using a private server.
No, they're not using a private server. Juan, fact check.
What you got is these people engaged in an act of hypocrisy so blatant and obnoxious. I'm amazed that you can sit here and not say, this isn't right.
Did Ivanka acid wash 30,000 emails under subpoena?
We don't know. Let's ask Cheryl Mills. Because
that good question. Did Ivanka's staff take the fifth? Like Cheryl?
Oh, no. Instead, guess what? You don't have anybody looking at this. No FBI. Nothing like that, Jesse. Instead, it's Abby Lowe, her lawyer, who's telling us these things. We don't know.
You mean just like Cheryl Mills when she was conveniently acting as
that's
Hillary
what I'm
Clinton's
saying.
lawyer.
So
and that's
what she said. So now, why don't we apply the same medicine right here, Kennedy.
We would, so that's like applying the same medicine to strep throat as you would to stage 4 cancer.
Oh, yeah, because the media overplayed Hillary.
No, here's what I will say, and I will grant you this. It's really irresponsible of Ivanka Trump to do this and open herself up to this kind of criticism.
Somebody spoke the truth on the 5.
Because everyone, after what we've been through with Hillary Clinton, everyone should be more responsible when it comes to email. So you don't invite these kinds of comparisons, which are false comparisons. We're not talking about Hillary Clinton sending emails. And the way she tried to minimize that story was so incredibly offensive and really skirted accountability, which she claimed to be taking. We're talking about her sending top secret and classified information over a private server that had very little security and almost no oversight. And then, in addition to that, deleting 30,000 emails, of which we do not know the contents, and then miraculously 600,000 of them show up on Anthony Weiner's laptop.
Ugh.
I mean, the levels of irresponsibility.
Those were repeats.
I'm not excusing what Ivanka Trump did. I'm just saying it's not the same thing. So let's stop pretending that it is.
It's the very same thing that you're using your private email to send out government communications.
Our government communications are all government communications.
Let's just not forget.
But guess what? When you were talking about classified, that was all done subsequently. At the time, Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State, said none of this was
false.
Okay, by the way,
let's not forget that Clinton wiped the server, and I'm talking also about Hillary.
Okay. On that note, did an Obama-appointed judge just give the caravan the green light to enter America? Find out next.
Battle intensifying after a federal judge temporarily bars the Trump administration from refusing asylum to migrants who might cross the border into the U.S. illegally. So instead of filing claims at legal ports of entry, the ruling allows migrants to apply for asylum anywhere, no matter where they cross. The judge argues that this is what U.S. law requires. President Trump ripping the decision and vowing to take the fight all the way to the Supreme Court.
This was an Obama judge, and I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen like this anymore. Everybody that wants to sue the United States, they file their case in they file their case in the Ninth Circuit, and it means an automatic loss. No matter what you do, it's a disgrace what happens with the Ninth Circuit. We will win that case in the Supreme Court of the United States.
So, Kennedy, what do you make of this? The judge also saying that in the response that he got from the Trump administration, the president would have authority to just simply close the southern border if he just wanted to do it on his own.
Yeah, they're putting up that concertina wire and those Jersey barriers, and it's very interesting. Obviously, both sides are fighting for the narrative, but it just seems inappropriate to me that once again we have an immigration issue that it's making its way from the bottom up through the judiciary when it really should be dictated by Congress. And I really feel like Congress has abdicated their responsibility. And Jesse, earlier you were joking about infrastructure, it being the issue that brings two sides together at the Thanksgiving table. These two side should really figure out what to do about immigration. They're not going to be able to have comprehensive immigration, but for people who are seeking asylum, we need to do a better job of defining that and really figuring out for those who need help, figuring out how to get that aid to people without turning this into an entitlement-heavy welfare state. I don't think that's within the purview of the United States government. It's a big compliment to this nation that people want to come here and be safe and work and be free. Having said that, we do not have appropriate systems for accommodating that.
And Jesse, I just wanted to come at you with some numbers here. It says...
Don't come at me with numbers, Williams.
Is that scary, Jesse?
Bring it.
All right, so 70% of Americans, according to a Monmouth poll, say that people who qualify for asylum should be allowed to make their application, and only 21% of people in Arizona, California, Texas, New Mexico see the caravan as any kind of threat.
Fake polls. No.
Fake polls.
Yeah, no, I was looking for the red wave, so I don't trust polls these days, Juan. I don't know if I can believe those, but I will give you some numbers
wave?
of my own.
I thought you were looking for a blue wave.
Well, it never happened. Let me hit you with a number of my own. 500 MS-13 among the caravan.
Oh, yeah.
That's a DHS number. They have paid informants on the inside of the caravan. So what they're going to do is they're going to roll the dice when they come seeking asylum. They're going to say if you have 500 MS-13 in the midst of a 7,000 large caravan, this judge is saying, you know what? We'll take our chances that we grant this person asylum from MS-13, then they skip the hearing, and then they go slice and dice everybody up. I'm not willing to take that risk, Juan. I'm just not. And I think the president, as the commander-in-chief, is interested in the safety and security of the American people. These asylum applications have skyrocketed because the Central American countries have realized there's a little loophole in our system. You can't do this if you're Canadian, you can't do this if you're Mexican, but if you're from Central America and you show up and you say, I fear prosecution or persecution, then they're going to let you in. Persecution for fleeing violence or poverty, there's poverty everywhere. There's violence everywhere. An ACLU lawyer comes and tells them what to say, and then they're home free in this country. And even the local Tijuana mayor doesn't want the caravan there. The guy actually called them bums. I'd say that's racist, but it can't be because he's Hispanic himself.
Yeah. I think you would scrub the words from the Statue of Liberty. Give us your poor people yearning to breathe free. But
I love the Statue of Liberty, even though it came from France.
All right. So, Dana, it's been a rough 2 days here because you've had the president pull the troops that he sent in the midst of the campaign from the border now, and now you have the judge saying people should be allowed to apply no matter where they cross the border.
Well, DOD said two things. One, that not all the troops are coming back, but the troops that were sent had accomplished the mission that they were supposed to set up, which is what Kennedy was just saying in terms of putting up the barriers, and they get to come home, so I guess we should be happy about that. The issue, though, on this is, to Kennedy's point, the Congress definitely has a role here, and I don't know if the administration is going to win this like they did on the
travel
Muslim ban, yeah, the travel ban that they had to redo, because the statute is very clear. It says Congress says this, and Congress has this responsibility. I don't think that the judge is being partisan here. I think that 9 Kavanaughs on the Supreme Court would probably have a hard time supporting this. But could the court support something if the Congress actually does its job and fixes something? Absolutely. And I think that might need to be where the focus should lie as soon as the new Congress gets put in place.
And it looks like we just got a statement from Sarah Sanders, White House press secretary. It says this decision will open the floodgates to allowing countless illegal aliens into this country.
All right. So, Greg, I wanted to put you on the spot and say,
why not? You always do.
Do you think that at this point, given what we've seen, that maybe Trump was engaged in some fear-mongering over the caravan in order to help with the midterms?
Hardly. This was a manufactured political phenomenon. The poll that you're talking about presents a naive setup. It's really not about a present-day caravan. It's if that caravan succeeds, what it means about how many come after. If you don't stop it here, then it will never stop. And the fact is, if you want to fix immigration, this is a thumb in the eye, and it's actually incredibly arrogant. It's an arrogant challenge to the United States. The caravan is an abuse of our system. Yep. In fact, the whole principle of a caravan is precisely to overwhelm a system that's already under stress. So these activists look and go, these guys are having problems. We could actually rush the border because they can't handle it, and we make them look bad. So if you actually are saying, look, this sucks. This is not a good thing. You are seen as bigoted or as racist or you hate people. Think if you applied this phenomenon to arenas beyond your border. You're waiting in line at the DMV for an hour, but 100 people rush in because they rush in and overwhelm the system. You lose your space, and somehow maybe 10% of them get ahead of you. That's what this is. It's arrogant. It's meant to overwhelm and divide and anger people. That's why it's wrong.
So I thought you changed your argument, because I thought, remember, they were diseased, they were terrorists, they were Middle Eastern terrorists, they were MS-13
I never said they were diseased. You're putting words in my mouth,
I'm saying this is the argument that was coming, and I just thought...
But that was not my argument. That was not my argument. My argument has always been about process, due process.
Well,
you should see, because I've said it here.
What? Oh, no,
You're changing my opinion right now.
I think the argument that was being put forward by the administration was
I'm putting forth a different argument.
Invading America.
It is actually an assault on a system.
Well, that's fine.
We don't. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
All right. Are Democrats heading for a major divide? The revolt against Nancy Pelosi is just one of the looming problems. That's next on The Fall.
Kevin.
What about Kevin?
my gosh. That was a commercial break flub. Okay, we were talking about somebody named Kevin. Okay, now we're going to move on to the real segment. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get fired again. All right, Democrats may have taken back the House, but the party is apparently now splintering on 3 key issues.
I'm going to take over. All right, first, 16 House Democrats have signed a letter vowing to oppose Nancy Pelosi as their next speaker. This, as a new poll says, 40% of Democrats would like to see someone other than Pelosi assuming the leadership role. Meanwhile, the embattled Democratic leader is criticizing those in her own party who want to investigate the Trump administration, telling the New York Times, quote, yes, on the left there is a pound of flesh club. Greg's a member of that, I think. And they just want to do to them what they did to us. That's not who we are. Go get somebody else. That's who you want. And then there are progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is now supporting a campaign to primary incumbent establishment Democrats to move the party further left. Dana, have you recovered?
Almost. I'm sorry. That was just like one of those things that happened. But Jesse, you read that very well.
Well, thank you very much.
It was like your first, like you didn't even like.
I didn't skip a beat, no, but I wanted to ask you. You said there's some deal now going on with
so I'll
Fudge.
do the breaking news that just happened in this hour. So Marcia Fudge, who's a congresswoman from Ohio, she had said she was going to wait till after Thanksgiving to announce her decision on whether she would challenge Pelosi for the speakership. Apparently she has. Remember, they had the meeting last week in her office, and Marcia Fudge has now decided she's not going to do that. This is according to reports, and she is going to accept a Pelosi suggestion that Marcia Fudge head up a subcommittee on elections.
And you predicted this would happen.
I did. Well, all I said was that if you raise your hand and say, I might challenge you, but you might be able to like get a bridge in your district or something, or more work. So.
It's a Murkowski rule. It's what Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski have been doing in the Senate for 2 years now. And now smart Democrats have figured that out. If I make a bunch of noise and make Nancy Pelosi just scared enough that I get something out of it, but don't really hurt her, it benefits me in the long term. It also raises the profile. No one would have known the name Tim Ryan if he hadn't have challenged her for leadership.
Seth Moulton,
2 years
up
ago.
in Massachusetts.
Would this work at Fox? Should I make more news? should I be complaining more?
Make more noise.
Yeah,
that really works at Fox.
I'm going to keep my head down.
Greg, would you like to comment on anything that just happened?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting conflicts coming up for the Democratic Party. For example, you have a president who actually does like to compromise because if it leads to a deal, which he loves, he will compromise. So the problem is, will Democrats refuse to cooperate with a leader who might give them what they want because they've been calling him Hitler Jr. for 2 years? I think the Dems are going to look really bad if they slap down an outstretched hand, which I think Trump might do. The other thing, too, is I think the real battle for smart Democrats in 2020 is in identity politics. They have an opportunity to craft a new message of unity that targets the healing of divisions within their party and outside their party. It's the antithesis to modern leftism, the identity politics and the oppression versus oppressed idea. But I think it would resonate, especially now.
But we do have an issue that I want to talk about, which is the new representative-elect, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
AOC.
Yes, in the AOC. She is suggesting, Jesse, that maybe she'll give her full support to a new national campaign to mount primaries to sort of moderate Democrats so that you get even more progressives to win in those districts.
She's like the left-wing Steve Bannon. Just running around the country and primarying moderate Democrats. That's going to be a big headache for the National Party. And I think Nancy Pelosi has a lot of work to do reining this person in. I mean, this is like the Tea Party on the left now. You're going to go out and maybe nominate some kooky left-wingers that can get out of the primary, and then they're going to get shredded in the general. And we saw Tea Party Republican candidates go down in flames because they weren't ready for prime time in the Senate races in the last decade. But, you know, I think Pelosi's got a firm grip, and she'll be fine. Pelosi said some things I even agree with, Dana. She says, I don't think we should be running on abolishing ICE and impeachment, especially in competitive House districts. We're going to lose those if we do that. And she also said on the Mueller probe, if Mueller comes out with something that only the Democrats like, and it's not convincing to Republicans to say, you know what, this is impeachable, then they shouldn't go for impeachment. And I agree with that.
All right. Well, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I think there's lots of very interesting politics here, and much of it has to do with the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm just making something that's plain to the viewer who's seen a picture of Marcia Fudge. She's black, and nobody.
She should chair that caucus.
Right, but nobody in the Congressional Black Caucus signed that letter put forward by Tim Ryan of Ohio. And of course, both Ryan and Fudge are from Ohio, know each other very well. And the second thing to say is there's no candidate right at this moment running against Nancy Pelosi. We cited a poll number at the top of the segment saying 40% of the caucus says, I would like to have somebody else. Well, the vote's next week. And guess what? There's 40% who say we want Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
And guess what? You talk to the people in the American unions, you talk to people in terms of the churches in this country, you talk to people who are the organizers in this country, especially people involved with health care, the #1 issue in the midterms, and they all say Nancy Pelosi is one of the greatest speakers of the House ever. But if you talk to Republicans, this is kind of odd. Donald Trump says he's going to help her get votes if necessary. He wants her to be. I don't understand. I think it's Machiavellian. But nonetheless, Republicans love beating up on Nancy Pelosi.
Which is why
she showed them they won 40 seats, so she did a good job for her side. All right, Chipotle facing backlash after firing a manager seen in this video. Over 10 million people have viewed that clip. But now the restaurant chain is forced to make a big apology. And we've got the details next.